Welcome to KWS Talks, the show where we take a deep dive into our school and explore the interesting people who are part of it.
We're here to bring you fresh perspectives, insightful conversations, and a touch of humour to brighten your day.
I'm Tristan Haverman, and I'm a sixth former who takes maths, further maths, physics, and geography. I'm one of the head students and co-host of KWS Talks. I'm excited to bring this week's episode to you.
And I'm Becky Dowse, another sixth former who takes maths, further maths, physics, and history. I'm also a head student and the other co-host of KWS Talks. Together, we're here to guide these important discussions.
Today, we're honoured to welcome Mr. Martin, head teacher here at our school and the leading voice in all things to do with education. Join us as we delve into their experiences and role here at KWS.
Let's get started.
Hello, Mr. Martin. Teaching is a profession that shapes the future. Could you start by sharing what inspired you to become a teacher and what helps you keep motivated in your role?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on KWS Talks. Very exciting to be here. What got me into teaching? It fundamentally was I loved my subjects. I loved science. I was one of those kids in school who kind of looked out a window and saw a blue sky and questioned, why is it blue? And science was the subject that seemed to give me the answers. I loved that, and I loved then sharing that knowledge and the information. Science is full of facts and figures, and I was just excited to share what I'd learned and what I discovered, and I loved being able to share that with other people, and I think that's what kind of got me into teaching.
So, how did you choose your subject? I know you've spoken about how science kind of answered some of those really key questions for you, but was it a passion of yours growing up?
Yeah, I think it was. It's the wonderful world in which we live in, and I'm inspired by the world, and so getting to understand the sun and how that works and the universe and everything that's there, and for me, it was biology. I loved the idea of being in a classroom, and at that moment in time, I was learning about myself, my body, how it worked, what it was doing, the organs inside. When you kind of sit there realizing that you're learning the heart and how it pumps and how it works, it's happening right there in you. And for me, that was just fantastic. I loved that idea. And so I was really keen to learn more about myself, the species, how species interact, how we interact with our environment, and all of that just came together. And science for me was the subject that really inspired me.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's similar to a reason why I chose physics, is that it explains the world around me. And it's just really interesting to see how it can be applied to a ball falling over, or just anything that has or happens in this world can be explained through science.
Exactly.
So what was your path to becoming a teacher? Did you always know this is what you wanted to do?
I don't think I did. I remember, though, having a chemistry teacher, and he said to me one day that I'd make an excellent teacher. And I kind of scoffed at the idea and laughed at it and thought, that's not really for me. No one in my family was a teacher. So I hadn't kind of like got experience with family or friends that had become teachers. And it was probably leaving university. I always kind of like felt when I was making my subject choices, I knew that I had passion for certain subjects and I just wanted to pursue that and follow that. And so it was the natural progression of GCSEs up to A-levels, then looking at degrees and thinking where I'd like to go to study and continuing to study in it. I was very fortunate to get to university and gain an honours degree in biological science. I specialised in marine biology. It wasn't something that I thought I would go into, but just inspired by teachers. And I think that's really kind of like hits home. It was the teachers that inspired me. I had wonderful teachers, wonderful lecturers who kind of carved that path for me. But I didn't really think about teaching until I left university. I kind of wanted to go off and experience the world a little bit. And one of the things that I planned to do was I went to try and work for the Environment Agency, and I thought that would be a great way that I could use the skill sets that I've learned, environmental impact assessments, and doing some work with the Environment Agency to try and protect this wonderful world that we have. But it was there that I I wasn't happy. I realised that I wasn't doing the job that I really actually wanted to do. I was young and I could use computers, and so they kind of steered me into working on their electronic document management system, and I wasn't getting job satisfaction. And I thought, I'm going to make a change. And it reminded me of the conversation that I'd had with my chemistry teacher, who said, one day you should be a teacher. And I started to explore that. I looked into it and realised that may be where I get job satisfaction from, every day knowing that you make an impact and that you're sharing your wonderful subject with others. I went and explored that.
That's really interesting to hear how the satisfaction of the job kind of really impacts that. So before teaching, did you have any other careers? And if so, how did they shape you?
So I went from university straight to the Environment Agency and didn't really have any other careers based or jobs in other fields. But it was probably the understanding that I wasn't happy in a job that steered me into thinking, right, well, for my life, if I'm going to map out the next X amount of years, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? I want to do something that I know has an impact and that I get job satisfaction from. And I truly believe there is no better job than teaching. It's a wonderful, wonderful job in which we get to influence the next generation and shape the direction that they go in and support them. So I'm quite proud to know that I've taught students that have gone on to become doctors, taught students that have gone on to work in social care, taught students that have gone on to become nurses, dentists, and I've played a part in helping shape their life and their journey as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a job that definitely has that sort of impact on obviously the future generation and the future jobs, and you can be satisfied knowing that you left your small little piece of, or you're part of their history, and as they go on to do great things, then maybe they might mention you.
One thing that it's quite sad is that we don't actually get to spend much time. We spend so much time with students in school every day for kind of like 7 years. And then we kind of have these like leavers, year 13 leavers or year 11 leavers, and they go off and there's not real that much contact that you still have with them. So there's probably a lot of students that I've taught that I don't know how I've influenced, or I don't know what they're doing. But it's so wonderful that you get to speak to people and hear stories of what they go on. So one thing I would encourage all students to do is keep in touch with the school. Let the school know how they've got on, because you'll be surprised. Teachers would love to still hear from the students after they've left.
Right, yeah, I think that would definitely be a key message for all students listening to the podcast, or all students in general. It's just every now and then keeping in touch with teachers you might know well, or even the school, and just sending a reminder or a message saying, I've excelled in these areas, and I would like to thank such and such for helping me, take down that pathway. For example, your maths teacher in a maths degree.
Exactly. It's something that I'm keen to set up here at Catherine Warrington School, is that we create an alumni so that there is that way in which we can still keep in touch with the students that have been here, and just grow that community of Catherine Warrington, so that maybe students will want to feed back a little bit and support the students that are currently here as they go on to be successful as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. And I think that would definitely help, create that system and sort of that legacy for the KWS students.
Yep.
So apart from the moment you said when you spoke to your chemistry teacher about him saying that you'd make a good teacher, what other moments in your past careers or studies helped influence your work today?
From past career, I think very much it was the Environment Agency and knowing that I wanted to do something. And probably it's not a past career, but it was my first day as a teacher that really had an influence on me. I spent about 3 hours planning one lesson that was a 50-minute lesson. And I spent all night actually thinking about it. And it was my first ever on the teacher training route. And I went and I delivered this lesson, and I got to the end of it. It was just a blur, an absolute blur. But as the lesson ended and I was saying goodbye to the students, the very last student just stopped and went, "Thanks, sir. That was brilliant." And that was it. I was hooked. I thought, wow, what other job do you get where somebody comes and thanks you in that way? And as teachers, we get the privilege of being able to have maybe 5-6 lessons a day where we get to work with different students, different groups, to inspire and shape them. And there's nothing better than having a passion that you love and wanting to share that with others, and they're appreciative of that. And that was it. That hooked me straight away. And I realized that I had a powerful position as a teacher that I could utilize to support others, but that I gain from as well.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that sort of sentiment of that one student thanking you and that sort of hooking you in and seeing how the students appreciate your influence on their future.
Yeah, it really does show how meaningful teaching can be and what impact you can have on students. But I think the listeners will be quite interested to hear whether you've ever had a surprising or unusual job in the past.
A surprising or unusual? At university, I was lucky enough to be involved in the British University's North America Club, where they, your summer holiday, you get to go and work somewhere. So in America, and I went to work in America. I went to work at Cape Cod, and I used to drive the ferries from Cape Cod to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket Island. So we were deckhands, but the captain would get the deckhands to come and just hold the wheel. So I used to get to go up and steer the ferry for the passenger ferries, taking you over and visitors to Martha's Vineyard. So that was quite an unusual but a great summer of work in America.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you probably wouldn't have stayed it for long, but just having that sort of experience or just being up there and having control of the ship must have been amazing.
Yeah, and it was fantastic, just the experience of a different country and the way in which they operate and their culture, and just getting out of this country and seeing the rest of the world.
To go to more subject-specific related questions, why do you think your subject is important for students to learn? Obviously, you are a biology teacher, apart from being a head teacher. So why would you emphasize biology as a subject to take?
Yeah, so for me, the sciences, as you mentioned earlier on, when you it links to everything. So to have a true understanding of the world, you need to have a good scientific background. You have to have that basis of an understanding of how the world works. It will be used probably in every single facet of your life, whether it's a job that you do or if it's a hobby that you have. You can apply science to everything. I'm trying to teach my son at the moment how to spin the rugby ball as he passes it, and just it's science. It's understanding how that the momentum of the ball and how it cuts through and the way in which forces interact. You will be able to apply science to everything. So studying science, getting the basics of a good fundamental understanding in science is essential for you to then really understand trickier and more abstract concepts as well.
That's really interesting to hear. So what's your favourite area within science, and more specifically biology?
So strangely, as a biologist, I would say that my favourite area is theoretical physics. I love theoretical physics. It's brilliant to see where current minds are taking us on a journey of trying to understand the world. And so I kind of delve into that a little bit, try and read about string theory, and just understanding where the world is going in the theoretical physics world. I think that's the pioneering side of science, very much so. But for me, biology will always be kind of, excuse the pun, at the heart of my love of science. As I said earlier, it's just understanding how the world works, but understanding your body. It's such a fascinating vehicle to go through life with. We've got to make sure we take care of it. We've got to look after it. We've only got one body. So understanding just simple things like your diet and how that affects you, and how that can affect your moods, can affect the energy levels that you have. I love understanding the way in which my body works and how I can utilize that.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot to do with, your own body and obviously what you put in and how you use it. But I guess that is the key part of biology, is understanding yourself and how it works, and then you're using that knowledge to, just make your life better.
And
To
help other people too.
And obviously, as you said, as a teacher, you impart your knowledge, especially as a biology teacher, you impart your knowledge on how to live better, how to live healthy, how to live happily. So I think that definitely sort of increases the amount of satisfaction you get from teaching students.
Exactly.
What would you say is one misconception about your subject or role within the school, and how would you address it? So obviously, as a biology teacher, and then as a head teacher, as a role.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. A misconception in the subject, for me, I'm letting students into a bit of a secret here, but the more you study the subject, actually, the more you realise that you don't necessarily get given the truth. So the classic for me is photosynthesis, where we kind of teach the students that if you take carbon dioxide and you mix it with water, you can then make glucose and oxygen as a byproduct and gain energy. But actually, when you go into A-level, you start to realise that the water and the carbon dioxide don't go near each other. They don't mix together in such a simplistic way to kind of think H2O and CO2 goes on to make C6H12O6. It's actually the splitting of the water, and then carbon dioxide comes in and gets fixed later on. So the more you study and the more you go into depth in a subject, the more you truly actually get to understand it. So yeah, a little bit of a lie that we give to our GCSE students. It's important to know that equation, and it's essential for their GCSE studies. But at A-level, you actually get to discover, wow, it's not that way as simplistic as you maybe originally thought.
But I think that's one of the interesting things about A-levels specifically, is that in all the sciences and even in some other subjects, is that although you cover less of a wider variety of content, you cover more in depth, and you necessarily you see that what was said at GCSEs is not necessarily true. For example, in physics, it's like electricity and quantum mechanics. All of that stuff is not as wide as the entirety of physics that we would cover in GCSEs, but it's more in depth and more specific. Still, compared to university, there might be some lies, some twists of the truth, but all in all, it's still more information and
Yeah, that's the joy of A levels, and that's the joy of being a teacher of A level as well, is that you get to kind of like go on that journey with students again and get them to see these kind of like wonderful moments where the penny drops that, well, that's why we do that. And that's why we've learnt it that way, so that we can now understand it and take it to the next level.
Oh, that's really cool to hear. For a bit of advice for students, what would you say is one skill or lesson from your subject and your role as the head teacher that students would find useful in the real world?
I think from science, the thing that I've taken is being analytical, and it's the idea of evidence gathering and then making decisions based on evidence. You want to make sure that you've got the best knowledge to be able to make an idea or to make a decision. And science kind of like teaches us that. It's the idea of kind of exploring things, discovering things, working out why things are the way they are, and then taking the next course of action based on that information. So I think that's a wonderful skill to be able to take from science, is the way in which you gather information, distill that information down, work out what you think is truthful or not, and then go forward based on the information that you have.
But yeah, and I think that's especially one thing universities look at, is when they see you have a science A level, is that they recognize that you'll have analytical skills and have analysis and sort of, looking at different pieces of information and working out other things and using that to then apply to questions, which is definitely a useful skill in life, as you say.
And with science, it is that. It's the idea of science is questioning.
Yeah.
You want to kind of understand things. So you think, why? If this is doing this, why? If that's becoming this, why? And it's being inquisitive. And the more questionable you can be, the greater you'll start to gain knowledge and understand things.
Yeah. Okay. So to go back to being a bit retrospective now, is that if you could go back and give your secondary school self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would definitely go back to my secondary school self and remind myself of the importance of school. It's a great experience. It's a wonderful period of life, but you've got to take the most out of it. And I think I would probably go back to myself and tell myself to work harder. Fundamentally, because the one thing that you do leave with from education is qualifications. And those are the qualifications that stick with you for the rest of your life. And so you want to get the best qualifications you have. At the age of 43, I had to apply for the post of head teacher, and I'm still writing down my qualifications some 20 plus years after gaining them. And so trying to get the best qualifications you can is so important.
Yeah, and I hope you're out obviously further in life.
It opens up doors. Jobs. Yeah, it opens up doors for you.
School really is the start of that journey into your life. So, I mean, thinking about that, what is the key lesson or the most important lesson that you hope students take away from your lessons and from just you generally as they go on in their life?
I say it regularly in school, in assemblies and around the place. And I always end my last lesson with a cohort at GCSE or A level. And I break it down to two things, actually. And I say, look, I hope you've loved my subject and I hope I've helped you to understand something within my subject. But the two key lessons in life that I would always want to make sure students live by is it's nice to be nice. I try and teach in that way. I try and be as respectful as I can to students, smile, be courteous, be polite, be respectful, because that shares happiness. It makes people happy and it creates a better environment. So I always say it's nice to be nice. The second thing is that you should stand in the way of the things that you want. My gran used to kind of like say, que sera, sera, what's for you won't go past you. And I felt that was just leaving up to fate too much. But if there's something that you want in life, go and get it. Go and achieve that. Set your mind to it and you can achieve it.
I would definitely say that's quite a powerful message, is that, it's not always just going to it will come to you naturally, or it will just, just happen to you. What you want is you need to work for it. But in that, you can then choose what you want and then you can specifically work towards it. And I think that's a very, important message.
Yep.
And I want to thank you for answering these quite broad questions and these interesting questions about your teaching and sort of your life. And I think now we will be moving on to more fun questions and more interesting questions. First of all, what would you say is your favorite TV series?
Good question. Favorite TV series? I loved Breaking Bad, and I think there was the science in me loved that kind of part of the show as well. It was kind of something that myself and my wife really got into. Absolutely loved the characters, and the way in which the two main characters interacted and looked after each other. So Breaking Bad was a really fantastic TV series that I loved.
Maybe recommended for older students.
Yeah.
Just no
Definitely.
So what's your favourite song?
My favourite song, I have a couple of special favourite songs. The one that is very, very pertinent to me and is Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell, but there's a version of it by a UK pop band from the 90s. I can't remember the name of the band, but it's a phenomenal cover version of it. It was done on the Dermot O'Leary show for BBC Radio 2. It's just special for me and my family. I also sing songs to my kids. And one song that I sing to my daughter was when she was handed to me in the hospital, was a song sung by Frank Sinatra. And it's The Way You Look Tonight. And for some reason, I just picked her up and started singing it. And so it's something that I used to sing to her. So those are a couple of little favourite songs for me because they've got a personal meaning to them.
That's very nice. I mean, obviously, those songs, while, like you said, it might not really make sense, it's just still very, emotional and very significant in your life now.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful moment to share with us. Thank you.
No worries.
What would you say is your favourite book?
Yeah, good question. I wish I could read more. I've just been giving assemblies to the students about a book that I read called Orbital, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but I don't think it would be my favourite book. I would probably say that the best series that I've read recently, I quite like mythology. And so Stephen Fry's Mythos, Heroes. He then had the final two about the Iliad and then the Odyssey. I haven't yet read the Odyssey. It just came out in October, but I got given it for Christmas. I was told I had to wait. So I'm really excited to get into that as it's the final book in the series. So looking forward to reading that one.
Yeah, reading is quite a important thing in life, and it's definitely, a lot of people do wish they had more time to read, and I think stressing it enough now to read as much as you can, because as you move in towards life, like you said, there's more stuff going on and you might not necessarily find the time.
For me, I think the one thing that all students need to leave school with is that love of reading and the ability to read, because by having that, you have access to the best things that have ever been said or written down, and you can explore whatever you want to go off to and explore and study. My wife is an English teacher, so I'm very much encouraged to read as much as I can. But yeah, reading is phenomenal. The way in which it's good for your health, it lowers your blood pressure, it reduces your heart rate, it's soporific, so which means it can help you go to sleep and have better night's sleep. But also when you dive into a book, you dive into another world, so you see things from a different perspective. It gets you to help with learning empathy. And so, yeah, I would recommend all students and parents, carers and the community, make sure you've got a book by your bedside and make sure you're reading something.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's really great to hear. And I know you're a busy man, but what hobbies do you enjoy outside of teaching when you've got a bit of free time?
Yeah, with two kids, I'm very much a dad taxi and driving them to their clubs and activities. But one thing that I've done over the last few years is that my son's rugby club ended up not having a coach for his team when they were under 8s. So for the past 3 years, I've been developing as a rugby coach. I never played rugby as a kid. I absolutely love watching rugby. And yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed being a rugby coach for Datchworth under 8s, 9s, and now under 10s.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely quite interesting. And obviously, something people might not know about you is just that sort of extra thing that outside of school that you do.
Yeah.
This is quite an interesting question, is that if you could meet any historical figure, who would it be?
It's a very good question. I have lots of people that I would love to possibly meet, historical figures. But I would probably settle on Albert Einstein. I think being able to just be in his presence and just to hear some of the things of his take on the world, where his mind is, what his mind was doing, and where he was going with thoughts, and what possibly if we were able to bring him to now and for him to kind of like stop and reflect on what's happened since his time. I'd love to be able to see what he thinks of where science has now gone, the idea of space and exploring in space and seeing what his take is on that, and to see the world of kind of like quantum physics and how it's developed and progressed further. I think it would be amazing to be able to chat to him.
He's definitely been one of the sort of generational minds of our time, and something that a lot of people would want to see now is how he would perceive the world currently.
I'd definitely like to have a chat with him and see the same things as you there. So, just closing up now, is there anything else you'd like to share with the students or listeners?
Obviously, it's the start of a new year in 2025. So just to wish them all a happy new year. But just to reiterate that point that I made in assemblies, that time is precious. I read the poem by Rudyard Kipling, which goes along the lines of, if you can take the unforgiving minute and fill it with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And I really believe that's true, that if you put your mind to something, if you work hard at something, that you will be successful and can achieve so much. So I wish everyone a wonderful 2025, and let's make it a hugely successful year.
Well, yeah, thank you, sir. This has been quite the interesting podcast.
No, thank you
for talking to us today.
That's all for today's episode of KWS Talks. We hope you enjoyed this conversation and found it as insightful as we did.
Thank you to our guest, Mr. Martin, for giving up his time today to be a part of the podcast, but also for the incredible work that he does as a head teacher. His dedication really makes a difference every day.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to share it with someone who'd find it valuable.
And don't forget to join us next time for another engaging discussion with a brand new guest.
Until then, take care.